Hey guys, Barbarian's Real here with a bit more of a bit of Oathbreaker. This one's a bit different where I wanted to try and make an ultra budget version, so this is a budget bit of Breaker. The deck was super fun to put together in concept, and if you were considering getting into Oathbreaker, or you're that person who doesn't want to, but your friends insist on you making a deck because they're all playing it, it's the new thing, why aren't you playing it? Why aren't you doing this? Come on! Maybe you should try throwing this together. As of the recording of this video, the deck clocks in at just under $20, which feels pretty affordable to me. It's not going to be a tier 1 deck, but it's definitely going to be strong enough where you're going to feel like you're doing something. And hopefully, and most importantly, you find it to be fun. Once you're done with the deck, you could always upgrade it too. But at $20 to buy in for a new deck, it seems pretty reasonable. Anyway, let's get into it. When one runs with the wolves, one must howl with the pack. The leader of this pack is Arlinn. No, not the good Arlinn Cord who has a howling good time. Rather, this is the uncommon one from War of the Spark. A lot of people are not a big fan of this one, but I think she's just neat. Arlinn is a 6 mana, 4 green, legendary Arlinn Planeswalker with 7 loyalty and a static ability that reads, each creature you control that's a wolf or a werewolf enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Her lone activated ability is -2. Create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Arlinn's signature spell is not only on theme, it's actually the strategic crux of this deck. Howl of the Night Pack. Howl is 6 and a green for a sorcery that reads, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token for each forest you control. This is obviously very strong because you get to create an army out of nowhere, and even if you play this into a board wipe, it just takes you casting this one more time to rebuild your board. You can usually find yourself overwhelming your opponent with a bunch of 3/3s on board that they're going to have a little bit of trouble dealing with. So, if you've ever played Omnath, Locus of Rage, and EDH, you understand how brutal it is when your commander, or in this case Oathbreaker, directly synergizes with just ramping cards. In EDH, ramping is something you want to be doing anyway, but in Oathbreaker, it is a bit harder to justify because this format is based less on battlecruiser magic and more on making efficient, timely plays. That is, of course, unless the payoff is sweet enough. A payoff like Arlinn sicking an army of wolves that seem to come from nowhere at her enemies. This deck runs a full suite of budget ramp spells at various converted mana costs. I'm not going to go over each one in the video because the specific spells themselves are less important as much as is the idea that we are ramping constantly so that way we can hit Arlinn and then eventually resolve a Howl of the Night pack to make an army of 3/3s. Obviously, we can only keep resolving these spells if we keep drawing cards. So, on a budget, what do we have access to that lets us draw? Well, luckily, there's a mix of older and newer tech that allows us to keep drawing cards just under the condition that they're lands. Cards like Rowan and Fa'adia Seer allow us to eke out card advantage at the top of our library as a land. If we fast forward, both of these have been upgraded in the forms of Into the Wilds and Dryad Greenseeker. While all 4 of these cards only peel lands, the idea is that they're making filtering through our library easier, and they're all dirt cheap. We also run Shaper's Sanctuary to de-incentivize anyone from attempting to target our creatures with any spot removal or effects. If they do, we would draw a card and we essentially replace the card. If they're targeting to remove a wolf, it feels extra bad because they allowed us to draw a card at the cost of a token. So, there are obviously a lot of wolves and werewolves that could go into this deck, but rather than focus on the obvious, I'd like to spotlight 4 cards in particular that synergize well with Arlinn. Howlpack Resurgence is a flash anthem for all your wolves and werewolves that gives them +1/+1 and trample. This can completely maul an opponent's attempt at combat math if you flash it in before declare blockers. Feed the Pack and Wolfcaller's Howl are cards that allow you to keep churning out wolves passively to keep pressure on your opponents so they get no chance of rest. I am also quite fond of Kessig Cagebreakers, allowing the Wolfpack to run free by making a bunch of tokens every time it swings. One other card I want to highlight is actually a Pauper All-Star. I originally wanted to include Heroic Intervention, but it would have taken up a quarter of the budget. So when looking for anti-wrath tech, I naturally lean towards Rapid Vigor, which is a combat trick that allows you to essentially blank destroy all creature cards. They'll never see it coming, and it's a great way to mess with your opponent when they think they're safe. So overall, I think the deck is a lot of fun, and I hope that if you're on the fence about Oathbreaker, you give this one a shot. Again, $20 seems pretty affordable. As a little side note, the reason I put this deck together is because, as I've said in the past, I utilize MTG Finance to play the game cheaper, but I sincerely have no interest in making mad money from a format this new, as well, I just don't think it's financially sound to try and do so. It is my hope that you guys invest as much as you want into the format, buy the cards you want, and make sure you're having fun. Because at its core, isn't that what Magic is about? Anyway, normal stuff. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you want to see more of a bit of Oathbreaker or a bit of Budget Breakers, please comment down below. Have fun and roll safe.